The council chambers shook with panic. Representatives from 200 species filled the massive hall on Station Provonus, their voices rising in fear and confusion. Holographic displays showed the same horrifying images over and over, worlds being consumed, cities disappearing under waves of chittering darkness, billions of lives ending in screams. Captain Han Doyun stood in the observation deck above the chaos, watching the politicians argue while entire civilizations died. His jaw tightened as another delegate proposed retreating further into safe space. These aliens had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but now they ran like scared children. "They're going to abandon them," said Admiral Park Mireille, standing beside him. Her voice was quiet, but hard as steel. 12 billion people, and they'll just leave them to die. Doyen said nothing. He'd seen enough in his 30 years of military service to know that fear made people do terrible things. But this was different. This wasn't just cowardice, it was the death of everything he thought the Galactic Council stood for. On the main floor, Ambassador Choi Hyun-woo stood at the human delegation's pod. He was a small man with gray hair and tired eyes, but when he spoke, his voice carried across the entire chamber. "I vote no," he said simply. The room fell silent. 200 species, 847 votes, and only one had the courage to say no to retreat. A Velkin counselor, a being made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns, turned toward the human ambassador. "You are new to this galaxy, human. You do not understand the Vithar swarm. They cannot be stopped. They cannot be reasoned with. They consume everything. Your bravery is admirable but foolish." "Maybe," Choi said, "but we're not leaving those people to die." The vote passed anyway. The Galactic Council would retreat to the inner systems. The Outer Rim colonies were declared lost. The military fleets would pull back to defensive positions. No rescue would be attempted. Doyen left the observation deck before the final count finished. He already knew what he had to do. 2 hours later, he stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, the pride of humanity's small but modern fleet. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. They'd heard the news. They knew what was coming. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," said Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo from the communications station. She was young, barely 25, but she'd proven herself in the Mars Rebellion. "It's coded. Private channel. Put it through." The screen flickered, and a Velkin appeared. Not the counselor from earlier, but a different one. The patterns in their crystalline body moved quickly, showing agitation. "I am Crystallis 9, the alien said. "I cannot give you official support, but I can give you coordinates. The Vithar swarm has a pattern to their attacks. If you want to save those colonies, you need to move fast." "Why help us?" Doyun asked. "Because someone should," the Velkin replied, "and because you're the only ones willing to try." The transmission ended. Doyun looked at the coordinates now displayed on his screen, then turned to his crew. "Plot a course for the Outer Rim. Battle stations." His first officer, Commander Seo Jinwan, stepped closer. "Sir, we don't have authorization from Earth Command yet." "We will," Doyen said. "They're not going to let 12 billion people die either." He was right. 20 minutes later, the authorization came through. Admiral Park Mireille's face appeared on the main screen, broadcasting to every human ship in the sector. "The Council has chosen to retreat," she said. "We have not. All available vessels are hereby ordered to respond to the Outer Rim crisis. We're going in." Across the human fleet, ships began breaking formation. 37 warships, from massive dreadnoughts to small frigates, turned away from the Council's defensive line and pointed their noses toward danger. In the Galactic Command Center, alien officers watched in stunned silence as the human fleet accelerated to full speed. "They're going to die," a Quelon admiral said, his amphibious features twisted in what might have been pity or contempt. "Brave, perhaps, but dead within a week," Should we warn them? A junior officer asked. They know, the admiral replied. Humans always know. They just don't care. On board the Indomitable, Doyen walked through the ship's corridors. He stopped by the Marine barracks where Colonel Im Sunho was briefing his troops. The colonel was a massive man, scarred from a dozen battles, and his Marines looked ready to follow him into hell itself. We're not fighting like them, Sunho told his soldiers. The Council species use their fancy energy weapons and their shields and their careful tactics. That's fine for them. But we're from Earth. We know how to fight dirty. We know how to win when winning seems impossible. These bugs think they're the scariest thing in the galaxy. Let's show them what a real predator looks like. The Marines roared their approval. Doyen continued his rounds. In the medical bay, Dr. Yoon Taejin was preparing his team for mass casualties. In the engineering section, Specialist Lee Bora was modifying weapons that the Council considered too primitive for modern warfare. In the hangar, pilots checked their fighters, including young Lieutenant Kang Jiwoo, who'd earned the call sign Reaper for her kill count against pirates. Each of them knew the odds. Each of them had volunteered anyway. As the fleet entered faster than light travel, Doyun returned to his bridge. Outside the viewports, space twisted and folded. They were racing toward an enemy that had destroyed civilizations millions of years old. They were a tiny force against an endless swarm. Every tactical analysis said they would fail. But they were human. They were from Earth, a death world where everything tried to kill you from the moment you were born. They'd learned to fight back against impossible odds because on their planet, you either adapted or died. The Council species had evolved on gentle worlds, where life was easy and cooperation came naturally. They'd built their civilizations through patience and careful planning. War, for them, was something to be avoided at all costs. Humans had learned different lessons. They'd learned that sometimes the only way to protect what you love was to become the scariest thing in the room. ETA to the first colony? Doyun asked. 14 hours, Captain, his navigator replied. Good. Everyone get some rest. When we arrive, we're going to show the galaxy what Earth's children can do. Behind them, the Council fleet continued its retreat. Ahead of them, 12 billion lives hung in the balance. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, the Vithar swarm sensed new prey approaching. The betting pools across the galaxy gave humanity 3 days before complete annihilation. Some of the more optimistic gamblers gave them 4. None of them understood what was coming. The Deathworlders were going to war. The planet Tekris 4 looked like it was breathing. From orbit, Captain Han Doyun watched the surface ripple and writhe with movement. The Vithar swarm covered half the continent. A living carpet of chitinous bodies, each the size of a grown human. Cities that had stood for centuries were now just mounds of organic matter. Sensors are reading 3 billion individual Vithar on the surface, reported Commander Seo Jinhwan. Maybe more. The readings keep changing. Any survivors? Unknown, sir. But if there are, they won't last long. Doyun studied the tactical display. Every military academy in the galaxy would call this an unwinnable scenario. Send in ground forces, and they'd be overwhelmed in minutes. Orbital bombardment might kill millions of Vithar, but billions more would keep coming. The swarm had already consumed dozens of worlds using this exact strategy. Sir, Admiral Park is requesting your assault plan, said Lieutenant Kang Jiwoo. Doyen smiled, though there was no humor in it. Tell her we're going with Protocol Scorched Earth. Full authorization. Jiwoo's eyes widened slightly, but she relayed the message. Across the fleet, human ships began preparing weapons that made other species nervous. Thermobaric missiles, chemical dispersal systems, kinetic impactors. The kind of weapons that the Council had quietly suggested humanity should never use again. All ships, this is Captain Doyen. We're not here to win pretty. We're here to save lives. Fire when ready. The Indomitable led the assault. Missiles streaked down through the atmosphere, each one carrying payloads designed for one purpose: maximum destruction. They didn't explode like conventional weapons. They ignited the air itself, creating firestorms that swept across the swarm like the wrath of an angry god. The Vithar shrieked. It was a sound that registered on every frequency, a noise that made even hardened soldiers flinch. But the humans didn't stop. "Chemical dispersal in 3, 2, 1, called out the weapons officer. Canisters broke open in the atmosphere, releasing clouds of compounds that Earth's armies had used centuries ago and promised never to use again. The Vithar didn't have gas masks. They didn't have bunkers. They had tough armor and incredible numbers. But they breathed air just like everything else. The swarm began to die. Not by thousands, by millions. "My God," whispered someone on the bridge. "No," Doyen said quietly. "Just humans doing what we do best. Surviving." On the Galactic Command Station, alien officers watched the battle feed in stunned silence. This wasn't war as they understood it. This was extermination. "They're using chemical weapons," said a Mindari observer, his telepathic voice filled with shock. "On a planetary scale." "It's barbaric," another agreed. But they kept watching. Because barbaric or not, it was working. Colonel Im Sunho stood in the dropship as it descended through the smoke and chaos. Around him, 200 Marines checked their weapons. These weren't the energy rifles that Council species preferred. These were old-school firearms, flamethrowers, and explosive charges. "Listen up!" Sunho shouted over the roar of the engines. "The Vithar are tough, but they burn just like anything else. Stay in formation. Watch your sectors. And if something moves, kill it twice just to be sure." Private Nam Ki-hyun gripped his rifle tight. This was his first real combat mission, and he was terrified. But he'd trained for this. Every human soldier trained for worse than this. Earth had taught them well. The dropship hit ground hard. The ramp dropped, and the Marines poured out into hell. The Vithar were waiting. They came from every direction, scuttling over ruins, dropping from damaged buildings, bursting up from underground tunnels. Each one had 6 legs, mandibles that could snap through steel, and armor that deflected most energy weapons. The Marines opened fire. Bullets tore through chitin. Grenades scattered swarms into pieces. Flamethrowers turned attacking Vithar into living torches. It was brutal, ugly, and completely effective. "They're falling back," someone shouted. "Keep pushing," Sunho ordered. "Specialist Lee, blow that building. I want these tunnels collapsed." Lee Bora ran forward with her demo pack. She'd been an engineer before the military, but war had taught her that sometimes you built things and sometimes you destroyed them. She planted charges along the structure's foundation, set the timer, and ran. The explosion shook the ground. An entire city block collapsed, sealing the Vithar tunnels beneath tons of rubble. High above, Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo led her fighter squadron through the atmosphere. Her targeting system locked onto clusters of Vithar trying to regroup. The Council species fought from a distance, keeping their ships safe in orbit. Humans had different ideas. "Reaper Squadron, follow me down," she called. "We're going hunting." Her fighter screamed through the smoke at barely 100 meters altitude. Her weapons lit up the ground below, each pass leaving fire and destruction. It was dangerous. It was reckless. But it gave the Marines on the ground the cover they needed. Then her targeting system caught something strange. A cluster of Vithar near the hive entrance were moving differently. They were shedding their armor, becoming vulnerable for just a few minutes. "Command, this is Reaper 1. I'm seeing something weird down here. Some of them are molting or something. Their armor's coming off." Dr. Yoon Taejin's voice crackled over the command channel. "Say that again, Lieutenant?" "They're molting, shedding their shells. They're completely vulnerable when it happens." On the Indomitable, Yoon felt his heart race. That's it. That's their weakness. They have to shed to grow. During that time, they can't defend themselves. "How do we exploit it?" Doyen asked. "We need a live specimen, preferably a queen if they have one." On the ground, Private Nam Ki-hyun heard the order come through. "Capture a Vithar queen." He looked at Colonel Sunho, who nodded toward a massive structure in the distance, clearly a hive. "You heard the man," Sunho said. "We're going bug hunting." What followed was 3 hours of the most intense combat any of them had experienced. The Marines fought their way into the hive, a structure of organic resin and harvested materials that pulsed like a living thing. Inside, the Vithar defended their queen with suicidal determination. But humans knew about suicidal determination too. They'd invented it. Nam Ki-hyun found himself separated from his squad in a dark tunnel. His rifle was empty, his armor cracked, and he could hear Vithar approaching. Then he saw her, a Vithar queen, 3 times the size of the workers, in the middle of her molting cycle. Vulnerable, defenseless, he didn't think. He just moved. He grabbed the queen with his armored hands, activated his suit's emergency beacon, and held on while she thrashed and screamed. Vithar workers swarmed him, tearing at his armor, but he didn't let go. His squad found him 30 seconds later. It felt like a lifetime. They extracted him and the queen, fighting every step of the way back to the surface. Nam survived, barely. The queen survived too, sealed in a containment unit. Dr. Yoon spent the next 12 hours studying the specimen. He discovered the pheromone command structure that controlled the swarm. He found their reproduction cycle, their communication method, their weaknesses. By the time Tekris 4 was secured, 23% of the human assault force was dead or wounded. 800 soldiers had given their lives to save a world that wasn't even human. Doyen stood on the bridge, looking at casualty reports. Each name was someone's son or daughter, someone's friend, someone's loved one. "Was it worth it, sir?" Jiwoo asked quietly. Doyen looked at the planet below. The Vithar were dead or fleeing. The surviving colonists, nearly 4 million of them, were being evacuated. He thought about the council species who'd said saving them was impossible. "Ask those 4 million people," he said. "I think they'll say yes." He opened a channel to the Galactic Command. "This is Captain Han Doyen of the Earth Defense Fleet. Tekris 4 is secure. We have 11 more worlds to save. Send help or stay out of our way. Doyen out." Across the galaxy, species who thought humans were primitive savages began to reconsider. Maybe barbarity wasn't the same as weakness. Maybe sometimes the civilized approach meant letting people die. Maybe the Deathworlders knew something the rest of them had forgotten. The fleet moved on to the next world. Behind them, Tekris 4 began to heal. And across 100 worlds, people watched and wondered if humanity might actually win this impossible war. 3 weeks of constant battle had changed everything. Captain Han Doyon looked older than his years, his face lined with exhaustion. The human fleet had saved 4 worlds, but the cost kept rising. The Vithar swarm was learning. "They're adapting faster than we predicted," Dr. Yoon Taejin said, displaying his latest findings on the bridge's main screen. "Look at these samples from Quellan 2. Their armor has thickened by 40%. Our bullets barely scratch them now." Admiral Park Murray's face appeared on the communication screen from her flagship. "They're also developing kamikaze units. Small Vithar packed with organic explosives. They're targeting our ship's weak points." Doyen rubbed his tired eyes. "They're evolving in real time. Every tactic we use, they develop a counter within days. How is that possible?" "Because something is guiding them," said Commander Seo Jin-hwan. He'd spent weeks analyzing Vithar communication patterns. "They're not just insects following instinct. There's an intelligence directing them. I'm picking up quantum-level signals coming from deep in Vithar space. Something is controlling the entire swarm." The bridge fell silent. Fighting endless bugs was one thing. Fighting endless bugs with a strategic mind behind them was something else entirely. Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo broke the silence. So we're not fighting a swarm. We're fighting an army with a general. Exactly, Jin-hwan said, and that general is learning from every battle. The next engagement proved it. At Quelon 2, the human fleet encountered Vthar forces using completely new tactics. They baited the humans into ambushes. They feinted retreats and then counterattacked. They focused fire on command ships instead of random targets. The battle lasted 14 hours. When it ended, 6 human ships were gone, 4,000 soldiers dead. The colony was saved, but barely. Chief Petty Officer An Yura worked in the Indomitable's medical bay, trying to save the wounded. She was a veteran of 20 years, and she'd seen plenty of combat. But this was different. These injuries were worse. These soldiers were more broken. "We can't keep this up," said one of the medics, a young woman whose hands shook as she worked. "We can and we will," Yura said firmly, "because nobody else is going to do it." But even she wondered how long they could last. In her quarters, Ji-woo stared at the picture on her wall, her younger brother, Kang Min-ho, smiling in his academy uniform. She'd promised her family she'd come home. She'd promised her brother she'd teach him to fly when this was over. Now she wasn't sure she'd keep that promise. The alert klaxon shattered her thoughts. Another attack. She grabbed her helmet and ran. Her fighter launched into chaos. Vthar swarmers, new flying variants, filled the space around the fleet. They were fast, armored, and suicide-focused. They slammed into ships, exploding on impact. "Reaper Squadron, break and engage!" Ji-woo ordered. Her fighter twisted through space, guns blazing. She shot down 3, 5, 10 of the swarmers. But there were hundreds. Then her warning system screamed. A swarmer had locked onto her fighter. She tried to dodge, but it was too fast. The impact sent her spinning. Hull breach alerts filled her cockpit. Her controls were failing. "Reaper 1 is hit! I'm going down!" She crashed on Quelon 2's surface, in territory still controlled by the Vthar. Her fighter was destroyed. Her radio barely worked, and she was alone in enemy territory. For 3 days, Ji-woo survived. She ate rations, drank from her suit's recycler, and moved only at night. The Vthar hunted her. She could hear them clicking and chittering in the darkness, searching. On the second night, she found something that made her blood run cold. Hidden in a valley was a massive structure unlike anything she'd seen before. It looked organic but impossibly complex, like a giant brain made of living tissue and crystalline growths. Thousands of Vthar moved around it in precise patterns, tending to it, protecting it. She managed to transmit coordinates before her radio died completely. Then she kept running. The rescue team found her on day 3, half dead from exhaustion and dehydration. They extracted her just as a Vthar hunter pack closed in. On the Indomitable's medical bay, Yura helped stabilize her. "You're one tough pilot," she said, smiling. "I found something," Ji-woo whispered. "Something big. Something important." The coordinates led Dr. Yoon to his breakthrough. The structure Ji-woo had found was a neural hub, a biological computer coordinating all Vthar forces in the sector, and if there was one, there were probably more. Maybe even a central hub coordinating the entire invasion. "It's like a brain," Yoon explained to the command staff. "The Vthar workers are just cells in a body. The queens are organs. But this thing, this overmind, is what thinks, what plans, what adapts." "Can we destroy it?" Doyen asked. "If we can find the central hub, yes. But it'll be protected. And destroying it might..." He paused. "It might kill or disable every Vthar connected to it." Admiral Park leaned forward on the screen. "Then that's our target. We find this overmind and we kill it. How do we locate it?" Jin-hwan worked through the data. "The quantum signals I've been tracking all originate from one point. A dead star system called the Crucible. That's where they entered our galaxy. That's where the Overmind must be. Distance? Doyun asked. 3 weeks at maximum FTL. It's deep in Vthar-controlled space. Then we go. Admiral, request whatever reinforcements Earth can send. This is going to be the fight of our lives. Over the next week, preparations intensified. More ships arrived from Earth, 30 vessels fresh from the yards. But they also received troubling news. The Galactic Council was debating a quarantine of the entire sector. Ambassador Choi Hyun-woo delivered the message personally, arriving on a diplomatic vessel. He met with Doyun in private. They want to seal off this entire region of space, Choi said, anger barely controlled in his voice. They're calling it containment protocol. They'll trap you here with the Vthar and wait for everyone to die. Can they do that legally? They can do whatever they vote to do. And right now, they're scared. Some species see you as saviors. Others see you as dangerous warmongers using tactics too brutal for civilized space. The vote is close. How long do we have? 1 week, maybe 2. Doyun called a meeting of all ship captains. Colonel Im Sun-ho attended via hologram, his face grim. Dr. Yoon was there. Ji-woo, still recovering, insisted on being present. Here's the situation, Doyun said. We have 1 week before the Council potentially seals us in here forever. We have one target that might end this war. And we have one chance to do the impossible. Sounds like another Tuesday, Sun-ho said with dark humor. We split the fleet, Admiral Park said. Strike Force goes for the Overmind. Defense Force holds the line and protects the colonies we've already saved. We can't let the Vthar take them back. I'll lead the Strike Force, Doyun said. And I'm coming with you, Ji-woo said. Everyone looked at her. She'd barely survived her last mission. This is my intelligence. I found that hub. I'm seeing this through. Dr. Kwon Yunji, the fleet's chief psychologist, spoke up. Captain, I need to say something. The crews are exhausted. Morale is falling. They're watching their friends die for people they've never met. Some are questioning why we're doing this. And what did you tell them? Doyun asked. I told them the truth, that we're human, that we don't leave people behind, that maybe we're crazy, but we're the kind of crazy the galaxy needs right now. Did it help? Some. Others just need a win. A real win. One that ends this. Then let's give it to them, Doyun said. We attack the Overmind in 3 days. Prepare your people. Check your equipment. Say your prayers if you have them. The meeting ended. People filed out, each with tasks to complete. Ji-woo stayed behind. I won't lie to you, Lieutenant, Doyun said quietly. This mission is probably suicide. I know, she said. But I made a promise to my brother. I told him I'd come home, and I will. But first, I'm going to make sure there's a home worth coming back to. In the distance, the Crucible waited. Trillions of Vthar defended it. The Overmind lurked at its heart, ancient and alien and infinitely hostile, and somewhere behind the human fleet, a quarantine armada assembled, ready to seal their fate. The odds were impossible. The stakes were everything, and the Deathworlders prepared to bet it all on one final throw of the dice. The Crucible was a dead star system, but it writhed with terrible life. Captain Oh Sung-min watched through his stealth frigate's sensors as his ship, the Silent Knife, drifted through the outer reaches. What he saw made his blood freeze. Command, this is Silent Knife. Confirming visual on the target. He paused, struggling for words. It's bigger than we thought. Much bigger. The Overmind hung in space like a nightmare made flesh. It was kilometers across, a massive sphere of organic tissue and neural pathways that pulsed with sickly light. Around it, trillions of Vthar moved in orbital patterns, protecting their master. The entire system was one vast fortress. How many defenders? Captain Han Doyun asked from the Indomitable. Too many to count, sir, Conservative estimate, 5 trillion individual Vithar, maybe more. They've had weeks to fortify this position. On the Indomitable's bridge, silence fell. 5 trillion. The human fleet had maybe 50,000 soldiers left. The math was simple and brutal. "We can't fight through that," Commander Seo Jinhuan said quietly. "We don't have to fight all of them," said Dr. Yun Taejin. "We just need to reach the Overmind's core. Destroy that, and the entire swarm should collapse." "Should?" Admiral Park Mirai asked from her ship. "The theory is sound, but I've never tested it on this scale." Ambassador Choi Hyunwoo's face appeared on another screen, transmitted from the diplomatic vessel. "I have news from the Council. The quarantine vote passed. You have 6 days before they seal this entire sector. After that, you're trapped here forever." "Understood," Doyen said. "Then we attack in 2 days. That gives us time to prepare and 4 days to complete the mission." After the briefing ended, Doyen walked the ship's corridors. In the Marine barracks, Colonel Im Soon-ho was selecting his team for the ground assault. These would be the soldiers who'd board the Overmind structure itself. "Volunteers only," Soon-ho told them. "This is a one-way trip for most of us. We go in, we clear a path, we plant the bomb. We probably don't come out. Anyone who wants to sit this one out, no shame. You've all done more than enough." Not a single Marine left the room. In the medical bay, Chief Petty Officer An Yura was preparing supplies. Dr. Kwon Yoonji sat with her, both women knowing they'd be overwhelmed with casualties soon. "I've been talking to the wounded," Yoonji said, "recording their messages for families back home, just in case." "You think we're going to lose?" Yura asked. "I think we're going to give everything we have. What happens after that is up to fate." Yura nodded. She'd made her own recordings, said her goodbyes. Now she just had to trust that it would be enough. Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo sat in her fighter, running pre-flight checks. Her brother's picture was taped to her console. She touched it gently. "I'm going to keep my promise, Min-ho," she whispered. "One way or another." The plan was desperate but simple. The fleet would divide into 3 waves. The first wave, heavy ships and fighters, would punch through the outer defenses. The second wave, including the Indomitable, would deliver the assault teams to the Overmind's surface. The third wave would provide cover for retreat. "And the bomb?" someone asked during the final briefing. Dr. Yoon displayed the weapon. It was a jury-rigged antimatter warhead, built from ship's reactor cores and wrapped in whatever containment systems they could salvage. "It needs to be delivered to the Overmind's core, here." He pointed to a spot deep within the structure. "The explosion will destroy the neural network and collapse the command structure." "How do we get it there?" Soon-ho asked. "We carry it, and someone has to fly it in the last 1,000 meters. The corridors inside the Overmind are too narrow for standard bombers." "A fighter, then," Ji-woo said. "I'll do it." Doyen started to object, but she cut him off. "I'm the best pilot we have. I've been inside Vithar structures, and I found this thing in the first place. It should be me." Doyen looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, Lieutenant. But you get in and you get out. That's an order." "Yes, sir," she lied. The attack began at dawn, or what passed for dawn in deep space. The first wave hit the outer Vithar defenses like a hammer. Ships that had fought for weeks unleashed everything they had. Missiles, kinetics, energy weapons, all of it designed for one purpose: make a hole. The Vithar responded with their own terrible violence. Kamikaze swarmers slammed into human ships. Bioweapons corroded armor. Massive Vithar warriors the size of corvettes tore through formations. Captain Oh Sung-min's silent knife darted through the chaos, using its stealth systems to map safe corridors. "I'm uploading the path now. Follow my course." The second wave charged through the gap. The Indomitable led them, her armor scorched and pitted from weeks of battle. Doyen stood on the bridge watching Vithar numbers that seemed infinite. All Marines prepare for deployment! Sunho's voice echoed through the ship. They slammed into the Overmind's surface. The structure was alive. It pulsed and writhed beneath them. Boarding pods fired, carrying Marines into hell itself. Sunho led from the front. The interior of the Overmind was a nightmare landscape of organic corridors and neural tissue. Vithar defenders were everywhere, evolved specifically to kill humans in close quarters. Flamethrowers up front! Clear these passages! Sunho roared. The Marines advanced, step by bloody step. Specialist Lee Bora planted charges on neural clusters, causing cascades of destruction through the structure, but for every meter they gained, soldiers died. Chief An Yura was hit by shrapnel from a Vithar explosive. She kept treating wounded even as blood ran down her own face. When a breach opened in their position, she grabbed a rifle and held the line while her patients were evacuated. "Go! Get them out!" she screamed at her medics. She died still firing, buying 30 seconds that saved 8 lives. On the Indomitable, Commander Seo Jinwan detected something terrifying. "Captain, I'm reading quantum fluctuations from the Overmind. It's trying to communicate." "With who?" "With us." A voice filled every speaker on every human ship. It was old beyond measure, alien beyond understanding, and filled with cold intelligence. "Humans," it said, "you fight well, but you cannot win. I have consumed 1,000 species. I have ended civilizations that ruled galaxies. What are you but insects pretending to be wolves?" "We're the species that says no," Doyen replied. "We're the ones who fight when fighting is impossible. We're from Earth, and Earth doesn't raise quitters." The Overmind laughed, a sound like worlds dying. "Then die well, little wolves. You have earned that much." Dr. Kwon Yunji, aboard one of the medical ships, did something desperate. She'd been studying the Overmind's communication signals. She used the experimental neural interface to make contact. For 3 seconds, she touched the Overmind's thoughts. What she found there broke something in her mind. Ancient hatred, infinite hunger, and memories. Memories of the species that had created the Vithar millions of years ago as weapons, before those creators were themselves consumed. She broke contact, gasping. "It's not evil," she whispered. "It's not even alive in any way we understand. It's a weapon that outlived its makers, and it's been killing ever since." On the surface of the Overmind, Sunho's Marines reached the core access point. Half his force was dead. The rest were running on stimulants and desperation. "Lieutenant Jiwoo, we've cleared your path. You're good to go." Jiwoo's fighter launched from the Indomitable. The bomb was secured in her cargo bay. Her hands were steady on the controls. She'd accepted what had to happen. "All ships, this is Reaper 1. Beginning my run." Her fighter screamed through corridors made of living flesh. Vithar defenders tried to stop her, but she was too fast, too skilled. She'd been born for this moment. The core chamber opened before her. The Overmind's heart pulsed with terrible light. She armed the antimatter warhead. The timer showed 30 seconds. Her radio crackled. Captain Doyen's voice. "Lieutenant, eject now. That's an order." "Negative, Captain. Someone needs to make sure this bomb hits the exact center. Someone needs to make certain." "Jiwoo, tell my brother I kept my promise. I brought hell to the monsters." She aimed her fighter at the core's center and pushed the throttle to maximum. The Overmind screamed, a sound of pure rage and, perhaps, the first fear it had felt in eons. "For Earth!" Jiwoo shouted. "For humanity! For everyone the swarm ever killed!" The antimatter detonated. Light brighter than a star filled the crucible. The Overmind's scream cut off instantly. Across 12 star systems, trillions of Vithar simply stopped. They fell where they stood, their guiding intelligence erased in one brilliant moment. The human fleet, battered and broken, watched in stunned silence as their enemy died. Then someone started cheering. The cheer spread from ship to ship, from crew to crew. They'd done it. Against impossible odds, they'd actually done it. But on the Indomitable's bridge, Doyen bowed his head. Victory tasted like ashes in his mouth. 8,000 dead, thousands more wounded, and one pilot who'd flown into fire to save them all. "Sir," Jinhuan said quietly, "the quarantine fleet is 3 days out." "Let them come," Doyen said. "We're done running. We're done fighting. Now we go home." In the silence after the storm, humanity had won. But victory had cost them more than any of them wanted to pay. The flash of light faded, and then there was only silence. Across 12 star systems, the Vithar swarm collapsed. Billions of bodies simply stopped moving, falling to the ground like puppets with cut strings. The Overmind was dead, and with it, the terrible intelligence that had driven the invasion. Captain Han Do-yun stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the sensors confirm what they all hoped for. The threat was over. They had won. But as he looked at the casualty lists scrolling across his screen, victory felt hollow. 19 ships lost, over 8,000 dead, another 3,000 wounded, and one pilot who'd given everything to save them all. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from Lieutenant Kang's fighter," said Commander Seo Jinhuan, his voice strange. "Automated telemetry. It transmitted data until the moment of detonation." Do-yun closed his eyes. Even in death, Jiwoo had done her job perfectly. The data would help them understand the Vithar, prevent future invasions, save countless lives. She'd known that. She'd made sure of it. "Log it in her file," he said quietly. "Make sure her family knows. She died a hero." Around the fleet, the mood was complicated. There was relief that the fighting was over. There was joy that they'd actually survived, but there was also grief that sat heavy on everyone's shoulders. In the Indomitable's medical bay, doctors and medics worked frantically to save the wounded. The bay was full beyond capacity. Hallways had been converted to treatment areas. Some soldiers lay on the floor because there weren't enough beds. Dr. Yoon Tae-jin moved between patients, exhausted beyond words. He'd barely slept in 4 days, but he kept working because people were dying and he could save some of them. "Doctor, this one's critical," a nurse called. He rushed over to find Private Nam Ki-hyun, the young Marine who'd captured the Vithar Queen weeks ago. He'd been part of Colonel Sunho's assault team. His armor was cracked, his body broken, but he was alive. "Am I going to make it, Doc?" Nam whispered. "Yes," Yoon said firmly. "You survived a Vithar Queen. This is nothing." Nam smiled weakly. "Did we win?" "We won." "Good. Chief An would be glad." Yoon's hands paused. "Chief An? She died covering our retreat, saved my whole squad. She was the best of us." Another name for the list. Another family to notify. Another empty bunk in the barracks. Yoon finished treating Nam and moved to the next patient, carrying his grief quietly, because that's what soldiers did. 3 days later, the quarantine fleet arrived. Massive ships from a dozen council species emerged from FTL, weapons armed, ready to seal the sector forever. They found the human fleet battered but unbroken, and the Vithar threat completely eliminated. On Station Prevenis, an emergency council session convened. Captain Doyen was summoned to testify, along with Admiral Park Mirai and Ambassador Choi Hyunwoo. They stood before hundreds of alien representatives, many of whom looked at them with a mixture of awe and fear. The chairman of the council, a Velkan elder whose crystal body showed centuries of age, spoke first. "The quarantine has been lifted. The Vithar swarm is confirmed destroyed. However, this council must now address the methods humanity employed to achieve this victory." "Methods?" Do-yun asked, his voice tired. "Chemical weapons, orbital bombardment of civilian areas, tactics that violate the conventions of civilized warfare, Some members of this council believe humanity has proven itself too dangerous for galactic society. Admiral Park stepped forward. Too dangerous. We saved 12 billion lives. We stopped a threat that your civilizations ran from. And yes, we used brutal tactics, because brutal enemies require brutal responses. A Quelon representative stood. You used weapons we banned millennia ago. You showed no restraint, no mercy. How are you different from the monsters you fought? We stopped, Doyen said simply. The Vithar would have consumed everything. We fought, we won, and we stopped. That's the difference. The debate raged for hours. Some species argued for humanity's expulsion from the Council. Others argued for restrictions on human military capabilities. A few, including Crystallis 9, the Velkin who'd helped them, argued that humanity should be honored for their sacrifice. Then President Baek Jisu arrived. She was Earth's president, a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and eyes that had seen too much. She'd traveled for 3 weeks to reach the council, and she was not in the mood for political games. "May I speak?" she asked. The chairman hesitated, then nodded. President Baek walked to the center of the chamber. She looked at every species represented there, meeting their eyes, or whatever they had for eyes, without flinching. You call my people violent. You call us dangerous. You call us barbaric. You're not wrong. We are all of those things. Do you know why? She paused. Because we come from a world that tried to kill us every single day. Earth is a death world. Harsh, unforgiving, deadly. We evolved fighting everything from viruses to megafauna to each other. We learned to be violent because the alternative was extinction. She gestured to the viewing screens showing the saved colonies. But we also learned something else. We learned that strength means nothing if you don't use it to protect those who can't protect themselves. We learned that being civilized doesn't mean being soft. It means choosing when to be hard and when to be gentle. You abandoned 12 billion people because saving them was too costly, too dangerous, too hard. We didn't. We lost 8,000 of our own, proving it could be done. Every single one of those soldiers knew they might die. They went anyway. Because that's what humans do. We protect the weak. We fight the monsters. And yes, we do it in ways that scare you. She looked directly at the Quelon representative who'd questioned their morality. You asked how we're different from the Vithar. The Vithar killed because that's all they knew. We killed to save lives. When the threat was gone, we stopped. We didn't keep killing. We didn't conquer the systems we liberated. We saved them and asked nothing in return. The chamber was silent. So yes, we're dangerous, Beck continued. But not to you. Not to anyone who doesn't threaten innocent lives. We're dangerous to threats, to enemies, to things like the Vithar, that believe strength gives them the right to consume everything. She turned to the chairman. You can expel us from the council if you want. You can fear us. You can hate us. But one day another threat will come. And when it does, you'll have to decide whether you want the dangerous humans on your side or if you'd rather face it alone. She sat down. The silence stretched. Then Crystallis 9 stood. I vote to not only maintain humanity's council membership, but to offer them a seat among the 7 prime species. They have earned it in blood and courage. Another representative stood, then another. The debate shifted. By the end of the day, the vote was clear. Humanity was not only exonerated but elevated. They would have greater authority in council decisions. Their military tactics would be studied, not banned. And most importantly, they would lead the formation of a new joint defense force, combining human ferocity with alien technology. Admiral Park was offered command of this force. She accepted, knowing that the galaxy needed defenders who wouldn't run when things got hard. Captain Doyen declined any medals or promotions. He just wanted to go home. The Indomitable was barely space-worthy, held together by welds and prayers, but she could make one more jump. One last voyage. As the fleet prepared to leave, Dr. Kwon Yoonji held a memorial service. Every ship in the fleet connected via hologram. 8,000 names were read aloud, 8,000 lives honored. When they reached Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo's name, there wasn't a dry eye in the fleet. Doyen spoke briefly. "We came out here because the council wouldn't. We fought because no one else would. We lost people we loved because saving strangers was more important than keeping ourselves safe. That's not crazy. That's not barbaric. That's being human." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. Scarred, tired, but unbowed. "We're going home now. We've earned it. But remember what we proved here. We proved that being civilized doesn't mean being weak. We proved that sometimes the hard choice is the right choice. And we proved that when Deathworlders respond to a call for help, they don't stop until the job is done." The fleet jumped to FTL, leaving the Outer Rim behind. The colonies they'd saved through celebrations, monuments were built, songs were sung. And across the galaxy, species that had dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers began to see them differently. On Earth, in a small apartment in Busan, a young man named Kang Min-ho received a package. Inside was his sister's pilot wings, her commendations, and a letter from Captain Doyen explaining how she'd died saving billions. Min-ho cried for hours. Then he dried his tears, put on his academy uniform, and went back to flight training. His sister had shown him what it meant to be brave. Now he would honor her memory by following in her footsteps. The human fleet arrived at Earth 2 weeks later. The ships were battered, the crews exhausted, but they came home as heroes. Doyen stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as Earth filled the view screen, blue and green and beautiful. "Home," he whispered. "Yes, sir," Jinwan said beside him. "We made it." They had. Not all of them, but enough. And the ones who didn't come home had died making sure everyone else could. That night, Doyen visited the memorial wall where the names of the fallen were being engraved. He found Lieutenant Kang Ji-woo's name and touched it gently. "We did it," he told her. "You'd be proud of what we accomplished. The galaxy isn't the same anymore, and it's better because of what you did." In the silence of the memorial, he could almost hear her voice responding, confident and unafraid. "I know, Captain. I always knew we'd win." And somehow, standing there among the names of heroes, Doyen believed it too.